Hey everybody, welcome to the Gaming Dad. Ben here. Thought we'd take a little trip down memory lane with Back to the Future, the game by Telltale Studios. Now, Telltale Studios is famous for their Walking Dead series, not the TV show series, but the episodic gaming series where you can play on actually tablets and PC and all sorts of different platforms. Made it really easy for anybody that wanted to pick it up. They made the first episode available for free, and then you could purchase the next 2 through 5, and they've kind of done it with all the rest of their games. Now, I did pick this one up on the Xbox One, so I bought the entire game at once, and so we're going to give it a playthrough. I really wanted to see if this was going to be a good way to introduce Back to the Future to my kids. The movie itself is PG-13, so I was a little concerned with just obviously showing my kids a PG-13 movie. Did find actually that the game contains just about as much language in it as the movie does. So if language is a big deal for you, this may not be the greatest title. The violence is pretty much non-existent. There are some gangsters running around. I say gangsters. These are 1931 gangsters that are kind of doing what 1931 gangsters do, running speakeasies and firing off revolvers, but nothing ever actually hits anybody, and there's no blood and gore. So pretty much the only negative in terms of parental controls is the fact that there is quite a bit of language. I say quite a bit. It's PG-13 language, so no F-bombs, no continuous. It's just usually expletives. So when somebody's upset about something, or they may rattle one off. And it is few and far between, but it is definitely there. I loved how it started out with the opening scene that we've seen from Back to the Future, where Marty shows up with a camcorder and records the professor, or the professor, Doc. And the one thing I really enjoyed about this too is Doc is played by Christopher Lloyd. It is his voice. He voiced it. And so all the great Scots are exactly the way you remembered it from the movie. So you're going to go through and answer little question trees and walks you through kind of the storyline. You can miss things, but you won't actually advance until you find out all the story that you need to. So while it doesn't lay it out for you, you won't miss anything. So the way it's played through in any of the Telltale titles are that you're not going to completely miss something and fail it miserably. The worst thing you have to do is redo that little sequence again, which would be a max of 5 minutes. So there's no frustration of resets or things like that where you have to go back and play the entire game again to pick up something that you missed. There are some achievements that you get for actually talking the exact way that they did in the movie. I had managed to get one of those my first time around just by remembering what was said in the movie. It's not something that's required at all to complete it. There's almost no wrong answers when you talk to people. You'll just have to continue with the language tree until you get the right answer, basically. And there are orders that you have to do it, so you do have to get certain things in order. So you have to go, like in Doc's house right now, you had to go over and you had to pick up certain things in order to advance you in the story. So it is really easy in terms of control. Using a controller, I'm just walking around with the left stick, up, down, left, right, walking around selecting A when there's a little indicator on top. So in terms of control, really easy for even, I would say, a 4-year-old to pick up. Not that I would basically put a 4-year-old in front of this game, but the controls are very easy. So this video game basically comes out, I would say, after the first movie had come out. It's a time when Biff is actually very subservient to Marty's dad, and so clearly what had happened at the end of the movie has happened, and puts Mr. McFly right on top. So here's a part where Biff ends up getting Doc's notebook, and it will tell you that you need Doc's notebook to continue the game. So in order to do that, you've got to go around and find certain things and figure out exactly what you need to do to get Biff to relinquish that notebook. So there's a lot of different things around the room. Basically, I see the big, huge amplifier controls. We're going to go and crank that up. Another view directly from the movie where we see the amplifiers getting powered up, and we all know what ends up happening after Marty cranks up those amplifiers. But in this term, we're actually going to end up not doing that as much, and something else is going to happen where we're going to use that to our advantage. But playing through it my first time, I wanted to go around and select on every single thing. I'm a kind of a completionist when it comes to the games where I want to open up every single chest and every single box. So it was really hard for me to just follow the prompts and not just go around and basically hunt every single check mark and checkbox. So I thought the game played very well on the Xbox. I actually feel it was easier to control, and I had a little more control over the game, and I felt a little bit better about how it was moving when I was using a controller versus when I played on an iPad. So here's where Biff gets told, "Hey, you need to leave my son's guitar alone." And so, okay, I'll give it back, and so you've got to figure out, do something else to continue on with the story. I think at this point I end up going and talking to Mr. McFly and telling him that I can fight my own battles with Biff, you don't have to fight him, and getting Biff to come back over and play some more guitar. And so he's going to jam it up, and the same look we saw from Marty in the movie, but this time it's Biff, and gets taken out with the speaker just the exact same way. So he ends up with the notebook. Oh, all of a sudden there is the flashing from the DeLorean outside, and as we run out and find the DeLorean, we find that it is frozen, hot. Can't really tell either. It's either steam or ice. Can't really tell what it is. But if you didn't see in the beginning of the beginning of the video, Doc had been basically melting away, disappearing. He had obviously messed with his timeline somehow, somewhere, and disappeared like Marty almost did during the dance in the Back to the Future movie. So that was the reason for the estate sale that everybody was digging through Doc's stuff for. So Marty sees that Einstein was alone and trying to figure out where Doc is. So with a couple little sequences, we power up the flux capacitor and try to figure out where Doc came from, and we can't. So we have got to figure out when Doc is to be able to go and rescue him. And after talking to an old lady for quite some time and getting her to go check on her tea, or boiling water at least, that we find a newspaper and find out Doc's fate and where we need to go to rescue him. So the animation's not great. Now this is an older game. I believe it came out in 2010. So we really can't expect a whole lot from it in terms of graphics. I know that the later ones have gotten a lot better in their animation, but the story was really what we were going for, and kind of the feel of the game, see how it played out. So she's yelling at us with a big bullhorn. Now, one thing that I have found with these types of games is everybody's going to kind of have the same experience. Now, I know that some of the other Telltale games, there actually is a little bit more of a tree, but after reading through about Back to the Future, you're going to get the exact same story as you go through it, as everybody else is. You're not going to lose out. So the replayability is going to be a little bit low, so I wouldn't spend a whole lot on it. I think I may have actually overpaid for it a little bit. I picked it up used for $30. It may have been a little much, but I wanted to play it, and not to be fair, everybody in your family can play it separately, and they have separate save games, so you're not going to overwrite somebody else's save game. So we end up in it says June 13th, 1931. And I'm trying to figure out how a DeLorean going 88 miles an hour came in right with other vehicles looking like they were going 88 miles an hour. But anyway, a little gangster shootout had occurred, and clearly we messed it up and got in the middle of something, and now need to go hide the DeLorean so that our special 1980s vehicle is not picked up in the 30s, because that's going to change the future of the car. Really enjoyed the fact that they brought in a lot of the music from the movie, and kind of just wanted to crank that up a little bit as we got that little sequence. So we end up in Hill Valley, so it's the place where all of the Back to the Future happens through all the movies. And we end up in Hill Valley, and we have, just like in the Back to the Future movies, we have a version of Biff, and we have a version of McFly. These are grandparents of the... actually, I would be grandpa of Marty McFly, and a father, or I don't know how old he was when he had Biff, or if that was a grandchild that had Biff, but basically we're dealing with a early generations of those characters, and they of course look and act the exact same way, because that's just how Back to the Future rolls. We end up running into a very young Doc. Actually, he wasn't even Doc at this point. He was just Emmett Brown, law clerk for his father, Judge Brown, and would not admit to being a scientist. And we end up having to go through and convince him that we're actually from the patent office and need his help on a special thing so that we can break the present Doc out of the 1931 jail cell. So once that happens, here's the shooting that we get. The gangster is shooting. We end up pulling out a hubcap that we ripped off the side of the car and giving that a good old chuck at him. And there goes the gun in a second, because everybody knows how to throw a frisbee like that, and dead on with it. But who's looking for logic in this? It's just as cheesy as the movie was, so what do we expect? I would say this sequence here is probably the most action-oriented that there is, and the nice part is you don't have to do it with any real speed. There's only one part that actually requires some timing, and with that timing you probably could have done it 3 times in the span of the first of the amount of time they give you. It's only figuring out that that's the timing that you have to do, so you can continue to try over and over again to get the right sequence. So we end up here on one of early Doc's inventions with a rocket-powered bicycle that we end up putting together from a rocket-powered drill. Hopefully won't ruin too much of that of episode 1 here. I only wanted to cover episode 1 and give you an idea of how this goes. And there's the manure, and the car is speeding to it, and there was some language there, so I did decide to cut it out. But we end up with a bike crash, which how on earth somebody as old as Doc can survive that crash, we don't know, but clearly it's animated, so we're not looking for it to make much sense. And rockets can blow up within feet of you and you'll be fine. But if we were looking for logic, we have come to the wrong place. But as we end up closing out the episode, Marty reveals once again he has done something to ruin his timeline and is disappearing away. Great Scott. So I hope that gave you a great idea of what Back to the Future is and what Telltale Gaming is all about. Hope to see you back here in the near future as we review some more games. Thanks, and see you again on The Gaming Dad.